Today we're going to be taking a look at a brisket rub recipe. So I'm sure the title of the video got your attention. And let me just say from the outset that this is not by any means trying to rip off Goldee's or anything like that. This is a salute to Goldee's and the great folks there that are making some great barbecue. But all I'm trying to do is make a brisket rub that's pretty close in the flavor profile that you can make at home as an alternative. For example, if you live in Wyoming like we do and it's hard to get this stuff, it's a little expensive to have it shipped in. I do have a buddy that lives in Texas. He comes up here every so often, and next time he comes, I'm going to have him bring me a few bottles. But they don't carry it in the Walmarts up here in Wyoming. So this recipe is going to be an attempt to get as close as we can and make a really decent rub. And this is a recipe that you can change and make your own. So feel free to do anything you want with this recipe. And I just appreciate the good work that the folks are doing at Goldee's and helping us enjoy great briskets out there. So here we go. These are all the ingredients laid out, and we're going to go over this. The recipe is going to be posted in the comments or description, the video description section. You'll be able to see it. If you look at the ingredients on the bottle, it lists that it's got salt, spices, sugar, dehydrated garlic, cornstarch, dehydrated onion, paprika, turmeric, spice extractive, and extractives of paprika. Great little funnel. If you save the top of a Gatorade bottle, it makes a great funnel. Always save your little shaker bottles, and you can reuse them for whatever you want. So a great little tip on the Gatorade bottle funnel there. So we're going to start out with 1.5 tablespoons of kosher salt. And I'm using this diamond crystal salt. Bought this on Amazon. This little box for a guy cooking a few briskets a year probably lasts you a couple of years. But it's got the right profile. It goes really good with brisket. Next up, believe it or not, a little bit of table salt. Now, the folks at Goldee's talk a little bit about the table salt. Also, if you go over to Lockhart, Black's Barbecue, they've been using table salt for years on their briskets. So this gives it a nice profile. So this is 1.5 tablespoons of regular table salt. Next up is the Lawry's, much talked about. It's used in a lot of barbecue. So we're going to go with 1 tablespoon of the Lawry's in there. And it's got a really nice profile. It's a really fine salt that's in here with this stuff too. And so, but it balances nicely with the kosher salt, the diamond crystal, and the table salt. And now let's talk a little bit about pepper. Fiesta brand 16 mesh pepper. Get this on Amazon. And this bottle will last me for years. We're going to go with 5 tablespoons of that. But if you don't have the Fiesta brand, they make a coarse ground pepper at Sam's Club that's pretty cheap, and it's pretty darn close. But this is from Texas, and it's kind of got that Texas vibe going on, so that's why we're going to use it. Next up is 1 tablespoon of light brown sugar. Now, one thing I can suggest you do with your brown sugar is let it dry out first. Put it in a bowl and put it in your oven, and just turn on the light in your oven and leave it overnight. That's usually enough temperature to dry it out so it doesn't clump. I didn't do that this time, but that's kind of preferred. Next up, we're going to go with a teaspoon of smoked paprika, and pretty much any brand will do. This is going to help give the brisket a little bit of color. And I don't even think it really contributes to the flavor. Next up, we're going to go with a teaspoon of oregano. And that's just a spice that I like to put on stuff. I like to put this in my rubs, and it goes well. But if there's something you'd like to use that goes good with beef, like rosemary or something, feel free to use it. Next up is a teaspoon of granulated or garlic powder. This one is actually the powder. I just like the texture of this particular brand. It's not too chunky, but not too powdery. And then I found these onion granules. It's really nice. They're not real big, but they're not real powdery. It's got a real nice texture, and they tend to really cling to the meat. And so we're going with 1 teaspoon of those. Granulated onions there. And now to bring in just a tad bit of heat, we're going to go with a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. I tried it with a half teaspoon and thought it was just a little too hot, so I backed it down to a quarter. But again, if you like a little heat, bring it on in there. You're not going to hurt anything. And then a common ingredient that you'll find in a lot of rubs is mustard powder. So I figured let's add a half teaspoon of mustard powder in there just to give it texture, a little bit of flavor. Just something I always put in my rubs over the years. It seems to work. And next would be one of the ingredients listed on the bottle is cornstarch. And I've noticed a lot of rubs use this. So scientifically, I can't really tell you why. It just probably has something to do with the texture of the rub. And then finally, we're going to go with 1 teaspoon of turmeric. Again, I don't really know what this does for the flavor. It does give it a nice color in the rub, and it's listed as one of the ingredients on the actual Goldee. So I figured we'd throw in a teaspoon of that. And then we're going to mix it up. Now, one thing you will notice about commercial rubs that are made at these plants, the pepper seems to be more uniformly distributed throughout and stays with it better. You're not going to be able to do that with this. So when you go to shake it and put it on, just make sure you're constantly mixing it so you're getting out equal amounts of everything instead of it just clumping up and the salt falling to the bottom and the pepper coming out on the top, for example. Doing a side-by-side, they look similar, but they're not identical by any means because obviously this is not the real recipe. This is just a version of it. When you make this up, that's about enough to do 1 brisket, this recipe, and maybe have some left over. So give it a try and see what you think. Thanks for stopping by.